Oscar Wilde once wrote, "Life is too short to learn German." And for me, 2 years ago, when I was living in Germany with my boyfriend, that felt very true. I could say things like, "Ich heiße Christine, ich komme aus Canada." But I couldn't have proper conversations, and I kept asking him to translate for me. And one day I just asked, why is German so difficult? And he said, why? Because fuck you, that's why. Ha ha ha, funny, funny. That became our joke. 5 months later, I was packing a bag to leave him. I hadn't planned on leaving him. I just woke up that morning and I was like, I gotta get out of here before things get any worse. He would say things like, "You have nothing intelligent to contribute to a conversation." When we'd walk down the street, he would say it was embarrassing being seen with me. And I was thinking to myself, why does he even love me? Why did he ask me to move in with him? Until one day he said, "You have no place in my heart and my soul." And that's all I needed to know. So I woke up one morning, and while he was at work, I wrote a note, and I packed a bag, and I walked to the train station and looked up at the board and was like, what's the first train out of Germany? I gotta get out of Germany. Hopped on a train. An hour and a half later, I was over the border in a small town called Maastricht in the Netherlands. I got off the train. It was the middle of July, high tourist season, and I had planned nothing. I walked around for over an hour trying to find a hostel in the hot July sun until finally I found a hostel, and I begged them to take me. And they did, and I sat on this cot and I realized I can't even pay for this hostel because when I left them I had no money and I had no job. And I realized I was gonna have to become a hustler and a charlatan really quickly if I was gonna survive on the streets of Europe. So I decided to change the conversation, and I said, "Chris, don't think of this as the worst day of your life and that you're homeless. Think of it as an adventure." So I went online and I joined a house-sitting website, which is basically a service for rich people who are going on holiday, look for someone like me to look after their cats with renal failure or with diabetes. And so a week later, I had my first job in Brussels, and that lasted for 2 months. When that was over, back on the website, hustle, hustle, hustle. Then I was in Surrey, just outside of London. And then London, and then Amsterdam, and then Copenhagen, and then Berlin, and then Paris. And these were all for months at a time. And I was like, my God, the adventure is working. It's been a year and a half, and I haven't paid rent yet. It wasn't all easy. I was living off of 40 euros a week. So there were some really lean moments where I was like, should I put the peanuts in the yogurt or have the peanuts as a side dish? I was hitchhiking, which any woman will tell you is interesting. I'm not proud to admit that I was dumpster diving. Although oddly enough in Paris, there's this whole middle-class movement of dumpster diving to combat supermarket waste. So I'd be dumpster diving and having these eco-political conversations in French with these Parisian hipsters who are wearing bow ties and suspenders and shit. I was attacked in Brussels and on the Paris metro. The worst it ever got was in London when a delivery boy stole my details from a restaurant and was sexually harassing me, and I had to call the police just to get him to stop. Couldn't get him arrested. And everybody back home in Canada is like, oh my God, Chris, you're living the life. You get to live in these cosmopolitan European capitals for free. Hashtag best life ever. And I was like, I'm heartbroken, and I'm broke, and I'm homeless, and I'm starving, and I'm dumpster diving. I've been attacked on the streets in Brussels and in Paris, and I'm being sexually harassed by an Indian restaurant delivery boy. And while all of this was happening, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, I said to myself, I deserve this. I deserve it all. Because I'm not a very nice person, like he said. But then again, I decided to change the conversation, and I said to myself, Chris, everything you loved is gone. Make it worth it. And so the only thing that I still craved, and the only thing that still nourished me when I was starving, and the only thing I still had that no one could take away from me was writing. And so every day I would sit down and I would pour all of my pain into this document. And any writer here will tell you that, we write a paragraph and we're like, oh my God, I wrote a paragraph. My work here is done. I'm amazing. But I was banging out like 10 pages a day, and I don't write 10 pages a day. It wasn't long before I had 300 pages. It was basically the first draft of a novel. Really, it was basically my neuroses ejaculated into Microsoft Word. But I sent it to my literary agent, and he loved it. And so now, I say to myself, if the only good thing that comes out of the worst 2 years of my life is that I get what I've been craving, and I get a book to my name, then it'll all be worth it. Why? Because fuck you, that's why.